Hey guys, HackerSploit here, back again with another video. Welcome back to the Linux security series. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at how to secure Apache 2 or Apache, depending on whatever you want to call it. But again, we're referring to the latest version of Apache, which is Apache 2. And this video is primarily going to be based around working with the configuration file and fixing common, security misconfigurations that are made, especially when setting up a LAMP stack or just using Apache in general. We of course will then have a second section that'll be in another video that will actually cover how to set up web application firewalls like mod security with Apache, and how to set that up, so that you have some active filtering of traffic, and again, your web server is able to actively, mitigate threats. But in this video, we'll be covering some very important security configurations that you need to make, and how to set up your Apache configuration securely. Now, as I said, we are going to be working with the WordPress development server, and by default, the Linode or the image that was used to create it sets up a LAMP stack. So that means we have Apache already installed for us, so we don't have to do anything. We're just configuring it for the development team. So what I'll do is I'll open up my terminal here, and if we take a look at the var www directory, you can see that if I list out the files within here, you can see that we have two directories that are being served. We have HTML and we have WordPress, which is where the WordPress installation is installed. And of course, we have, if you take a look very closely at the user, the owner and the owner group, we can see that it belongs to www data and www data, which is a great thing to begin with. So what I'm going to start off with are going to be the security essentials, and we'll move step by step. So firstly, the first thing you want to ensure whenever you're dealing with Apache or any web server technology, you want to ensure that it's updated to the latest version. Now, the reason you want to do this is not because of new features. Well, that is one option, but for pieces of software like Apache that, over the years have had multiple vulnerabilities, almost a major vulnerability for every release, you want to ensure that you keep it up to date or to the latest version, so that any issues or any vulnerabilities are fixed immediately, right? And because we're on Debian, this is a rolling release distribution. That means we're going to get the latest packages. So I can just say sudo apt install Apache 2, sorry, that is Apache 3. We don't have that yet. So Apache 2, and it's going to tell me I'm running the latest version. So that's the first thing you want to do. The second thing you want to do is you want to ensure that Apache is using a user account or a service account with the lowest privileges possible, or it's using an unprivileged account. Now, you can see that by default with any web server configuration, it is recommended that you segregate duties, as we already covered in the previous videos. And again, you're segregating duties based on roles. Now, we've already given the users their own accounts based on their roles. And as we have seen within the password file, all other service or system accounts that again are dealing with services all get their own unprivileged accounts. For example, the MySQL database has or uses a MySQL service account that does not have any privileges whatsoever. You cannot log into it, so on and so forth, right? That service account is just used for the MySQL database and that service. Within the default configuration with any LAMP stack, it is recommended that you create www data. And of course, this is going to be responsible for the web server. And as you can see, it's carrying the least amount of privileges, and again has no particular shell that can be used to log in. Now, the reason you want to do this is, again, in the event your web server is compromised through a vulnerability and someone gets access to the system through the web server, and in this case Apache, the user account they'll be greeted with is going to be www data. And firstly, this account does not have any privileges, so again, they have limited access to what they can do on the system. Secondly, they're only limited to the directories that they currently own. In this case, the only directory that they own is going to be the WordPress directory, so they can do all the damage within there. However, they can't do anything within the system, which is a great thing. And of course, we can also disable their ability to actually get a shell session, which is also great. So that's the second thing that you want to do. Ensure that your web server or Apache is using a user account with the least amount of privileges. Right. Now let's take a look at some of the common security misconfigurations that are made plenty of times. And especially when we talk about, setting up a LAMP stack for WordPress or any other CMS, one of the biggest issues that new users face, or when users face when configuring their website, is they are unaware of the security misconfigurations that I'm just about to show you. One of these misconfigurations is directory listing. So for example, this is the development website. It's a simple WordPress website. If I go over to the WordPress content directory and I look for the uploads directory and I hit enter, what's this? Well, you can clearly see that I have a directory listing for the uploads folder on this web server that's currently running. So that means I can pretty much access all the files that have been uploaded to the WordPress installation or to the WordPress server, even files that I'm not supposed to see. Now, what's wrong with this? Again, as I said, this is a vulnerability because anyone in the world who can access this website will have access to your uploads folder. And of course, not every upload that you make onto your server or that you make onto WordPress is going to be a public asset, which means again, you may have private files that are being stored there. You may have user files. Your website may have authentication in place, and that authentication can all be bypassed by directory listing or the directory listing vulnerability. Now, if you look at this page closely, you can also see another vulnerability, and that is the signature listing vulnerability right away. Well, it's not signature listing, it's not a vulnerability per se. All it does is it actually lists out the web server technology and the version number that you're using and the operating system that this web server is running on, which is a huge vulnerability because an attacker can now, of course, potentially get what version of Apache you're running. That can further aid them in targeting attacks. They also know what operating system you're running, so that gives them an idea of how to structure the attacks. Now, these two vulnerabilities are the most common ones that again, you'll find even on production websites today that are running on Apache. And again, it's very, very simple to fix it. Now, all of these fixes can be applied, or all of the configurations can all be made to the Apache configuration file. Now, the Apache configuration file is found within the etc directory, and we'll use sudo, and I'll use the vim editor. So etc Apache 2, and we're looking for the apache2.conf file. Now, as I said, this is the global configuration file where you can make tons of changes to the web server, how it works. We, however, are only going to be targeting security, right? So firstly, let's take a look at the directory configurations here, which are going to be the most important, right? And here we have them. So our directory specifications, as you can see here, it gives you a bit of a documentation as to what's going on. So this sets the default security model of the Apache to HTTPD server. It does not allow access to the root file system outside of user share and var www. The former is used by web applications packaged in Debian, and the latter may be used for local directories served by the web server. If your system is serving content from a subdirectory in SRV, you must allow access here. So what this is saying is these are all the directories that are being served by Apache, and of course the one that is of interest to us is var www, and then of course we have the HTML directory and WordPress. Now in here is where you specify all the options for that particular web server configuration. So again, one of the things we need to fix is the fact that the website is indexing directories that should not be indexed, and number two, the signature of the web server is being displayed. So the first thing we want to do, and I'll just open up my notes here so that I have everything on track here, because there's a ton of configuration options that I need to set. The first thing we want to do is we want to set our options. Now, before we do that, we also have a file called the htaccess file. Some of you may have heard of it. Now, the htaccess file, you can see it tells us the name of the file to look for in each directory for additional configuration directives. The htaccess file is where you put any additional configuration options that you want the web server to run. So again, we can enter it within the htaccess file if we want, and the htaccess file is found within the root of the web server. I'll get to all of this in a second. And we already have a great security configuration that's added automatically to this configuration file, and that is you can see it right over here. So this is the files match operator, which specifies that if if all files or any files within the web server match ht, right, or they begin with the string ht, then that means that the user will not be able to access them. And that again is a security configuration that is set up to deny anyone access to this file, because as I said, it's stored within the root of the web directory. So as of this point in time, all the configurations, all the options that we want to specify must be specified within the htaccess directory or the htaccess file. So I'm just going to disable this temporarily, right? And we'll just disable that, and we'll go back in here. Now, we can create our own directory specification for the WordPress directory. So I'll just do that right now. So we will say directory, and we'll say var html. Well, not HTML, we want WordPress, right? And we are then going to close that tag. So directory. So now all the options that we want to configure for the WordPress installation can all be done within here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to set allow override to all. So we'll set allow override to all. So allow override to all, and that means we're going to override any options that have been set, and then we're going to go right at the bottom here, and we're going to set our options. So options, and we want to get rid of the indexing. And to get rid of a option within the configuration, we use the minus command or the hyphen, and we say indexes, right? And then we also want to get rid of the server signature being displayed. So to do that, we say server signature. Server signature is going to be off, right? So we just say off here. And in addition to this, we can also well, I'll stick with that first, and because I just want to explain this. So now that we've saved the changes, we can now restart the web server. So I'll just say sudo system control. We'll use system control, and we'll say restart Apache 2. The reason we're restarting it is so the new configuration settings can be loaded. We hit enter, we can see we don't get any error, which means everything was successful. So you can see we're currently on this page. If I hit refresh one more time, we still have access here. So I'll just go back into this here, and we will say sudo vim etc apache 2. And we will also enable it at the root of the web directory here. So we'll get rid of the allow override line right over here, and of course we are granting access to that directory, which is perfectly fine. So we'll also add the option here, so options, indexes, and as I said, you can work directly from this directory specification because it includes all files within it. I just showed you how to create the new one right over there. So I'll say restart, and if I restart that now, you can see that it's still listing this out, but the server signature has disappeared. Now, if this happens, then the easiest way of fixing this, if it's still displaying the indexing, is to go directly and create an htaccess file right over here. So I'll just save that. We've enabled the htaccess file, and we'll go into cd var /, and we say WordPress. And we hit enter, and then we say vim htaccess, and this is a dot file, so .htaccess. And we hit enter, and we can then within here add the options. So we say options, get rid of the indexes, and we save this file here. And it looks like we do not have the permissions here, so I'll just say w quit and enter, and we'll just quit from here, and we'll create the file with sudo. So we say sudo, and we hit enter, and of course we'll say options. Sorry, I'll just specify the syntax correctly here. So options, indexes, save that, and then we can restart the web server. So sudo system control restart Apache 2, and if we restart that, you can now see it's going to tell us forbidden. You don't have permission to access this resource. So these are pretty much the most common vulnerabilities that you're going to be faced with. Now, of course, the second thing we're going to talk about is if we try and access HTML here. You can see it's going to tell us that it's not found. That's because it is configured to access the WordPress directory, which is exactly what we want for the development team. So within the WordPress directory, you can now see, if I list out the files in here, we have the htaccess file that we created, but there's a problem. The htaccess file belongs to the root user, so we want to change that. So we're going to say chown, own, and we're going to say www data. and we say www.data, and we specify htaccess, the file that we want to change ownership of. So we'll just run it with sudo. If we list all the files now, you can see now they all belong to the user www.data. And of course, with our Apache configuration, we saw we had the security configuration that prevents us from accessing the htaccess file. So if we go right over here and say, hey, I want to access htaccess like this, and I hit enter, you see it's going to tell us you don't have permission to access this resource, which is excellent. So now, again, we cannot access any of the directories like WordPress content. And even if I go on up to the uploads directory, you can see I don't have access completely. So these are, as I said, the most important options. Now let's talk about securing a directory with authentication, or using passwords to secure directories. So to do this, and what I'm referring to exactly is, what if we wanted to password protect our WordPress installation? Let's say the developers are still working on the WordPress website, and they want to password protect it from the public. And of course, you need a username and password to actually get access. The way we would do this is, the first thing we want to do is we want to make sure we've updated our repository. So we can say sudo apt update and hit enter, and that's going to update our repository. Secondly, we want to make sure we have Apache utilities installed. So sudo apt install, we'll say apt get install Apache 2 utils, and we just say Apache 2 utils. There we are. We can see we have the utilities installed. And then of course we want to go into the Apache configuration directory. So we're going to say, etc Apache 2 and Apache 2 config, and sorry, we'll just go into the directory. We don't work with the configuration file yet. We now want to create an htapassword file. So we're going to say sudo htapassword, and you can see the command auto completes there. We'll specify the configuration. So it's going to be etc Apache 2, and then we specify htapassword. And this is where the password files or the password hashes will be stored. So htapassword like so, and then we specify the name of the user we want to create for the authentication. In this case, we'll just say dev, right? Let's just keep it simple. So we'll say dev. It's going to ask us for a password. I'll just provide the password here, and there we are, provided the password for the user dev. So if we list the files within this directory, and I'll list all of the files, you can see we now have the htapassword file. So if I cat the contents of the htapassword file here, you can see it gives us our hash, our password hash for the user dev, right? Which is excellent. Now the second thing we want to do is we can automatically add or set our configuration by modifying the htaccess file within the WordPress directory. So I'll just go into var www, and we'll go into directly into the WordPress file, and we say sudo vim. We want to access the htaccess file here, and we'll add some more configurations. This is where we add all the authentication options that we want. So we're going to say auth type is going to be basic, and we then want to specify the auth name. So we're going to say, we'll just call it development in progress. This is the notice or the authentication name, and then of course we're going to specify the auth user file. Right, so auth user file. This is the file that contains the password. So that's under etc Apache 2. Make sure you get the configuration or the spelling correctly. So auth file is etc Apache 2 and htapassword. Sorry, that is incorrect. Like so. So that's the file that contains the user password. And then of course we need to specify the option require valid user. So we need a valid user. And after this we can just save that, and we then need to restart the web server. So I'm going to do that right now. So where is the restart command? Or I'll have to just type it in manually. So sudo Apache 2 and hit enter, and that's going to restart it for us. If we now try and access the web server, you can see it's going to tell us please enter username and password. If we hit cancel, it's going to tell us this right over here. So I'll just open that up. It's going to tell us this server could not verify that you're authorized to access the document requested. Either you supplied the wrong credentials or bad password, or your browser doesn't understand how to supply the credentials. So again, if we try and log in using the credentials we created, so dev and enter the password, we now have access to the WordPress development, or we now have access to the WordPress website. So that's a quick little trick that can help you if you want to secure your content using a username and password. It's great if you're storing, again, as I said, private files on a web server and you want to protect a particular directory. You can do all of that using the authentication options that I've just shown you right over here. So that's pretty much all the options that I wanted to cover. And of course, as I said, we're going to be talking about preventing web application specific attacks using, web application firewalls like mod security. But in the next video, we'll be taking a look at how to secure an Nginx configuration or an Nginx web server